What do we get out of it for incubating all of this tribal warfare? What do we get? Well, we'll be defrauded and then discarded the moment we're not useful to these people. Import the third world, you end up with third world political conventions. Import the third world, you end up with third world politics. That's the way it goes. The law is not evenly applied. That's the point. These leftist scumbags are still given a pass. They are still treated with kid gloves. They are still given carte blanche. Let's be real here. Owning a handgun for self-defense comes with serious responsibility. You need it secure, but also accessible when it matters most. Too often that means choosing between locking it away or leaving it out, vulnerable to kids, guests, or intruders. That's the problem StopBox USA set out to solve, and they nailed it with the StopBox Pro. It's a 100% mechanical, keyless, battery-free lockbox that gives you instant, controlled access to your firearm. No electronics, no keys, no codes required. Just a patented 5-button locking system that responds only to your unique input. It's fast, it's intuitive, and it's built for muscle memory, so you're not thinking, you're reacting. And when seconds matter, that makes all the difference. I've had a StopBox for a couple years now and really impressed with the quality. It's secure, solidly built, but made with a compact design so it doesn't take up too much space in our home. With the StopBox Pro, you don't have to trade safety for speed or peace of mind for readiness. Your firearm stays secure, but always within reach. Plus, with holiday travel coming up, it's nice to know that StopBox Pro is TSA compliant, so you can secure and conveniently transport your firearm through checked baggage wherever you're headed this season. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off at StopBox when you use code Walsh10 at checkout. Head to StopBoxUSA.com and use code Walsh10 for 15% off your entire order. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show. Tell them that our show sent you. We all know costs have been all over the place, groceries, gas, subscriptions, you name it. So it's no surprise that we tend to assume everything is more expensive than it actually is. Case in point, 72% of Americans overestimate what life insurance costs. Turns out it might be more affordable than you think. Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance fast, easy, and surprisingly affordable. So if something happens to you, your loved ones have a financial safety net. With Policy Genius, real users have gotten 20-year, $2 million policies for just $53 a month. Looking for life insurance can feel overwhelming, but Policy Genius makes it surprisingly straightforward. They let you compare quotes from top insurers in just a few clicks so you can find coverage that actually fits your needs and your budget. They lay out all your options clearly with coverage amounts, prices, and terms right in front of you. No guesswork, just clarity. And since life insurance is such an important part of financial planning, it helps that Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace with thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot for people who found exactly what they needed. As a father and husband, I know how important life insurance is and the peace of mind that comes with it, knowing that your family will be financially protected and able to maintain their quality of life, even if you're no longer there to provide for them. Secure your family's future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/Walsh to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com/Walsh. When we talked about the rise of Somali clan warfare in American politics the other day, admittedly, the evidence was mostly anecdotal. There were a few reports and social media posts claiming that thousands of Somalis in Minneapolis had rejected Omar Fateh, the Somali mayoral candidate, because he belonged to the Darude clan. You see, according to these social media posts, many Somalis in Minneapolis are members of the rival Hawiye clan, and they'd rather abstain or even vote for Jacob Fry, a white guy, if you can imagine the horror, rather than betray their clan's honor and support Omar Fateh. That's how deep these clan loyalties supposedly go. Now, if all this is true, it's maybe the clearest sign yet, among many, many other clear signs, that all migration from Somalia and similar third world countries needs to be terminated immediately. All of it, 100% of it. And additionally, Somalia's temporary protected status, which has shielded Somalis from deportation for decades, for no discernible reason, must be revoked as well. I mean, whatever your position on immigration policy may be, no reasonable person can seriously suggest that we should import full-on tribal warfare into our streets. But again, it's critically important to determine whether this story is true, whether it's accurate to say that foreign blood feuds are indeed influencing elections in this country, causing civil disturbance and so on. And indeed, just 24 hours later, all doubt has been removed. Ilhan Omar, probably the single most vocal and resentful Somali in all of U.S. politics, because somehow there are a bunch of them, has just delivered a speech in which she attacks Somali voters who did not support Omar Fateh. Specifically, she calls for Somalis who didn't support Omar Fateh, including Somalis who rejected him because of his clan affiliation, to be expelled from the country. She wants the traitorous Somalis in the Hawiye clan to be forcibly removed from Minneapolis as quickly as possible. In other words, in a somewhat unexpected turn of events, Somalis are now the foremost advocates for Somali deportation in this country. Ilhan Omar is to the right of Tom Homan on this one. ICE is saying they want to prioritize the removal of illegal aliens who commit serious crimes. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar and the Darude clan are essentially out here calling for pre-dawn raids at the local Somali preschool. Family separations and everything. They'll be front row at the next Trump rally chanting, "Send them back," in a language that nobody can understand. So who said that tribal politics can't be entertaining at least? And we'll play only a small portion of Omar's full remarks as reported by Andy No, since Omar is subtitled because she can't be bothered to speak in English. So if you're listening to the audio podcast, you're not going to be able to make heads or tails of this. But here it is. Watch.
qofka Soomaaliga ah waa qof cadow sare ah dadkaas oo kaleetana magaaladayna nool dhex nool yihiin waan aragnaa anagoo dhan qaar waxa jiro aan dhahno qofkan wuu iska hadlaa macna ma leh kanina adeerkay waaye bidiis waxa dhihin waxa laga yaabaa ka fishaabiyaalkeen waa taqaaniin dadkan ka hadlaayo Starbucks ka la fadhiistinay masaajidka marmar inuu imaadana laga yaabaa xafladaha isla tagtiin waa taqaaniin dadkan ka hadlaa inuu guriga la deganahay waa aragtiin dadkaas iska qabta meel ma gaarin anaga Soomaali hadii aan nahay inta dadkaas ay nagu dhex jiraan oo aanan dhehaynin qofkaanaytii hana dhaafo.
Now, later on in this footage, according to the translation, Ilhan Omar attacks Somalis who translate her speeches into English. She claims those Somalis are misrepresenting her words and trying to get her in trouble or even arrested. Or at least I think that's what Ilhan Omar is saying. Based on the translation that was done by translators she's attacking. For all I know, the translators are messing with her in a very meta way. That said, Omar has challenged these kinds of translations in the past with little success. As you might remember, about 2 years ago, there was a dispute about what Ilhan Omar said during one of these speeches. Specifically, there was a dispute about whether she really said that she wants to use her position in Congress to advance Somalia's interests. Omar disputed the translation that was making the rounds online, where she said that very explicitly. In response, the Daily Wire commissioned a professional independent translation of Omar's remarks and found that the online translation was mostly accurate. So we'll assume, especially since Omar's team hasn't pushed back on this latest video in any way, that the remarks are, mostly accurate. The translation is mostly accurate. And also, by the way, as I've said many times now, this is one of the reasons why politicians should be banned from addressing crowds in any language but English. We as Americans, she's a congressional representative, we should know what she's saying. And if she comes back later and says the translation wasn't accurate, guess whose fault that is? That's totally your fault. Maybe speak in English. So if you speak in a foreign language and you get mistranslated, that's your fault. I got no sympathy for you whatsoever. And it's not our responsibility to spend like days we got to track down we got to go to Somalia, track down a Somali translator. Not our responsibility. That's on you. Speak in English. This is America. We speak English here. But assuming that all that is accurate, which I think it is, that would mean that indeed all of these TikToks and social media posts coming from Somalis in Minneapolis are accurate as well. Somalis are at each other's throats because of clan warfare, to the point that they're influencing elections in this country, as many of these posts are saying. So here's just a few of these examples where various Somalis reference Kabil, or intertribal conflict, which is what they call it in that language, which played a key role in the race. Watch.
This video is for the Say Wallahis. Let this be a lesson for you. Let the whole Umar situation be a lesson for you. If you want to break the curse from the older generations, then don't spend your time trying to please them. If Umar spent all that time trying to please the Somalis and just spent it on other communities, he could have easily won this. You don't really have to win over the Somalis to win anything. If you're running for a mayor, president one day, you don't need to win over the Somalis to win. You're not in Somalia. If you're thinking Ilhan Omar, 200,000 people voted for Ilhan Omar. Do you think all of them were Somalis? Hell no, they weren't.
For damn near every other function, the entire campaign became about Qabil. By no means am I saying Jacob Frey was a terrible candidate. Lakin, you guys had Omar Fattah, who could have been the first Somali mayor.
Somalia will not prosper for the next 10 years because of what just happened in Minneapolis. A young Somali man that goes by the name of Omar Fattah was running for mayor of Minneapolis. He asked for his people to come out and support him, to vote for him, but instead they went and they danced with a white man. I would understand if their policies didn't match. I would understand if he just wasn't the right fit. Maybe he was just too young. But they did it because of tribalism, choosing a name that they've been tied to for the past hundreds of years.
Now, tribal differences are such a major part of life in Minnesota that the state's Department of Health has published guidance on this topic. Quote, clans are a very sensitive topic for many Somalis. Enduring tension between rival clans has been a major factor in the ongoing conflict in Somalia. Clinicians should avoid discussing clans with Somali patients, as many may find it disrespectful or offensive. So if you're a doctor, it's apparently dangerous to even broach the topic of a Somali's clan identity. You know, you might get roughed up, I guess. I don't know. That's how important these affiliations are to these people. I mean, their voting based on is very important to them, but you're not allowed to ask them about it. They come to our country, and this is how they operate, but we're not allowed to ask them. How dare you? How dare you as an American expect them to explain themselves in any way? That's the attitude. Now, to be clear, it's not just last Tuesday's vote in Minneapolis that was influenced and probably decided by these various clan differences among Somalis. This phenomenon is far more widespread than that. In fact, Somalis have brought their tribal disputes all the way to Maine, where less than 10,000 Somalis reportedly live. I mean, if there's anywhere in the world you'd think you could go and you wouldn't have to deal with Somali culture, you'd think it'd be Maine, up in the mountains, in the woods. No, they got it up there too. This is an analysis from Steve Robinson, an editor of the Maine Wire, one of the top news outlets in the state. Quote, a Somali source in Maine offers this explainer on the clan dynamics unfolding in Maine/U.S. politics. The Darude clan dominates Somali political representation in Maine, but by population, other clans have massive presence, but for some reason, the Darude love power. People including figures like Ilhan Omar, Deka Dalak, Yusuf, I think these are actual people, Omar Fateh, Safia Khalid, Abdullah Ali, are just good old-fashioned American names there, are from the same subclans of Darude, Ogaden, and Majitin. In Somalia, however, the Darude are just one of the four major clans alongside Hawiye, Rahanwin, and Dur, without overall dominance. So this is stuff you got to know now to understand American politics. Now, before we continue with Steve Robinson's post, it probably goes without saying that from the perspective of actual Americans, none of these geographical differences or clan affiliations really matter or should matter. All of these people need to go back to Somalia without exception. The Somali legislators in Maine sound exactly like the Somali legislators in Minnesota. They're all talking about the importance of representing Somalia and not America. Watch.
waxaan kaloo idinkula dardaarmi lahaa insha Allah haddii aynu Soomaalinahay inaynu maaragtay wax wada qabsano dalkii ka fikirno dalkii wax tarno oo maaragtay haddii aynu dalka dibadiisa aynu joogno ama gudihiisaba aynu mar walba maaragtay aynu ka fikirno sidii aynu dalka horumarintiisa uga fikiri lahayn especially dadkeena jooga maaragtay qurba joogta ah.
So again, if you listen to the audio translation, that is a Maine represents a state rep in Maine who is saying that Somalis should prioritize their own country, which is Somalia, and they should prioritize developing Somalia. That's her priority as a state representative in the state of Maine. And they want to develop Somalia, not by going back to Somalia where they belong, but by coming here and stealing from us and sending our resources back to their home country. That's what they want to do. It is in every sense a parasitic relationship. These are not people who've come here to help America. They're people who've come here to take the resources and bring it back to their godforsaken, failed state country that they came from. Now, when Americans see clips like this, we don't exactly think of the Hawiye or the Darude clan, which, as far as I know, is completely unrelated to the song Sandstorm, but I'm not sure. We just think of Somalis, and we want them out of the country. And that's the appropriate response. But as Steve Robinson reports, there's a lot more going on under the hood. Quote, Somali immigrants from these other clans, particularly in Minnesota's large diaspora, have grown resentful of Darude's rising influence in U.S. politics. For instance, when Nasri Warsam, non-Darude, ran for office in Minneapolis back in 2021, Darude-aligned groups reportedly blocked him and supported an Indian-born woman instead, preferring a non-Somali over someone with a rival clan. This intra-clan rivalry has led Hawiye, Rahanwein, and Dur members, including those from Somaliland, which flies its own flag and seeks independence from Somalia, to back non-Somali candidates. They support Jewish incumbent Jacob Fry for mayor over Somali opponent from a different clan, prioritizing clan loyalty over ethnic or religious solidarity. Again, this is American politics now. Just wonderful. What's the downside? I can't see one. Now, not that I doubt Steve Robinson's reporting, but I wanted to look into the case of Nasri Warsame to see the details of how a non-Darude politician might be shut out by Darude-aligned groups. And just out of a morbid sense of curiosity, I wanted to get a sense of what happened here. And I came across this video, which again is subtitled. This is a former Minneapolis City Council candidate Nasri Warsame's version of events, a version of what happened to him. Watch.
dhibaatada ugu weyn oo dadkeena qabaan maanta halkan taagan inay halkan ku soo gaartay kala qaybsanaan dadka in bulshadeena maanta ninka DFL xukumo oo jeerka ah inuu soo baxay uu yiri markii la weydiiyay su'aasheed sidee ninkani baan ku saartay uu yiri waxa kala tashtay qabiilo Soomaaliyeed dad waxgarada oo Soomaaliya inuu yiri siyaasiyiinta Soomaalida la doortay Minnesota I
also like how all these Somali politician videos look like they were shot on camcorders in 1993. So they're in this country. They still have not discovered iPhones somehow. Anyway, Nasri Warsame, the non-Darude, is explaining how Ilhan Omar and her clan blocked him from ever getting the Democrat Party's endorsement. Instead of backing Warsame, the Democrats backed an ethnically Pakistani woman named Aisha Chugtai. Quote, they shouldn't be teaming up to block me from ever getting the party's endorsement simply because I come from Mogadishu, he said. And apparently people from Mogadishu belong to a separate clan from the Darude known as the Hawiye. Now, the official story is that the state Democrat Party known as the DFL blocked Warsame because of an altercation at a political convention and not because of his clan identity. This is from the local Fox affiliate back in 2023. Quote, the DFL's executive committee voted to approve bylaws banning Warsame on Tuesday after the organization conducted an investigation into the chaos of the Ward 10 convention that it concluded Warsame's campaign was responsible for the conflicts that emerged after his supporters rushed toward the stage when incumbent Aisha Chugtai was about to speak. And by the way, here's what that confrontation looked like. This is what a political convention in Minnesota looks like now and sounds like. Import the third world, you end up with third world political conventions. Import the third world, you end up with third world politics. That's the way it goes. Now, you could debate whether this altercation is worth banning a candidate from participating in a political party that's supposedly committed to democracy, but at a minimum, based on this footage, it's plausible that Warsame has a point. It looks a lot like his supporters feel they were being robbed and mistreated, and he was taken out in a backroom deal. Certainly, there are Somali news outlets that seem to think these backroom deals are becoming more and more common. This is a report from Waaga Kusub Media, which obviously a name you can trust, even if you can't pronounce it. Quote, members of the Hawiye community, who form a significant portion of the Somali population in Minneapolis, originally from Mogadishu, Galmudug, and Hirshabelle, Southwest and Jubaland regions, have been emboldened by Jacob Frey's win and are now vowing to reshape future elections, including the next congressional race involving Ilhan Omar. Now, of course, that would be the best possible outcome here, short of mass deportation. Imagine if Somalis are responsible for ousting Ilhan Omar from Congress. How exactly would they spin that outcome on MSNBC or MS Now or whatever it's called now? And how would Ilhan Omar respond in that scenario? What exactly would that meltdown look like? Well, courtesy of Ilhan Omar herself, we actually don't need to guess the answer to that question. Watch.
I have no worry. I don't know how they take away my citizenship and like deport me, but I don't even know like why that's such a scary threat. Like, I'm not the 8-year-old who escaped war anymore. I'm grown. My kids are grown. Like, I can go live wherever I want.
So apparently she doesn't mind the idea of being deported. She certainly wouldn't miss anything about this country, which she openly despises. So there's a real win-win possibility here. All that's needed is for the Trump administration or the Somali community, as the case may be, to step up to the plate. And then once Ilhan Omar is gone, we would need a lot more deportations all over the country. Somali tribal conflicts aren't just spilling out into the open in Minnesota and Maine. There's also a very large Somali presence in Ohio. In fact, the Somali population in Columbus is the second largest in the entire country. The clans in Columbus include the Darude clan, which is the majority, as well as the Hawiye, the Dur, and so on. So the demographic makeup is a lot like Minneapolis. The same is true in the Seattle metro area, where tens of thousands of Somalis live for some reason. As all these populations grow, the tribal tensions are going to become more pronounced and more violent. I mean, we can all see that happening. More and more candidates will be elected or sabotaged on the basis of their clan, just like we're seeing in Minneapolis. All of that is inevitable. And in return for all of this, as we tolerate all of this, as we bring in these third world Somalis from their hellhole country, and we watch tribal warfare, unfold in our own communities, what do we get out of it? That's always my question. What do we receive in return as Americans? Well, we receive nothing. Nothing at all. We get nothing out of any of this. For incubating all of this tribal warfare, what do we get? Well, we'll be defrauded, humiliated, and then discarded the moment we're not useful to these people. They'll either destroy each other or they'll destroy us first. There's no other possible outcome if we allow this to continue. So we should not allow it to continue. Revoke Somalia's temporary protected status, which never should have been granted in the first place. We gave the designation to Somalia in the early 1990s because of the collapse of the failed authoritarian regime that Ilhan Omar's father worked for. And we've kept renewing it ever since. For no reason. For no reason that benefits us. And that needs to end. And the deportations need to begin. Trump should announce, okay, this is over. We are not accepting any more Somalis. Period. Can't come here. You got the whole rest of the world you can go to, or stay in your own country. Not here. Sorry. We don't need you. We don't want you. You don't contribute anything. It doesn't help us. Sorry. No. Doors closed. We need to stop pretending that we're responsible for housing foreigners because they can't manage their own countries. And if we don't, if we allow this favorable treatment to continue, then we're all going to get a very detailed clan by clan, up close and personal history lesson as to why exactly countries like Somalia have torn themselves apart. And by that point, once we've all learned that lesson, we'll be left with nothing. And the Somalis, including Ilhan Omar, will have happily moved on to the next country that they will strip mine, denigrate, and ultimately destroy. But really, it's up to us. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Let's be honest, most dress clothes are uncomfortable, high maintenance, and just don't feel very good to wear. Spend too much time ironing, dry cleaning, and tugging at stiff fabrics. That's why I love Mizzen and Main. They make classic menswear with performance fabrics, so looking sharp doesn't have to be a hassle. These guys actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've been perfecting it ever since with modern fabrics that really deliver. Their shirts and pants look refined and professional. But here's the thing, they are stretchy, lightweight, moisture wicking, and wrinkle resistant. Everything's completely machine washing, so no more ironing or dry cleaning runs, nothing like that. So they completely did away with the worst part about dressing nice. As a busy guy with a family, that's a game changer for me. The moment you put their clothes on, you feel the difference. You get that professional style without sacrificing comfort, whether you're in the office, traveling for work, or even just out on the weekend. I love my Mizzen and Main clothes. Quality is great. But my favorite part is that it looks ready to wear after being cleaned, and I don't have to iron. I can just take it out of the dryer, throw it on. That's what I'm looking for. Laziness and style, those are the two. That's the combination. That's the sweet spot for me, and Mizzen and Main has that covered. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com, promo code Walsh20. That's Mizzen spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-A-I-N.com, promo code Walsh20 for 20% off. mizzenandmain.com, promo code Walsh20, and if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. Look, I don't usually go crazy over holiday sales, but here's the thing. When something actually makes a difference in your life, when it's built to last and makes every single day better, that's worth paying attention to. Ever since we got Boll & Branch sheets on our bed, I've understood what people mean when they say sleep changes everything. Sliding into bedding that feels good isn't just nice, it's non-negotiable now. Right now is the perfect time to invest in yourself and your bedding. Boll & Branch is having their best sale of the year right now, 25% off everything on the site. If you've been thinking about upgrading your bedding, this is definitely the time. I start with their signature sheets. If I were you, they've really nailed that sweet spot between being soft and breathable, which makes a huge difference for getting good sleep. The cool thing is they actually get softer every time you wash them instead of continually disintegrating like cheap box store sheets. All their stuff is worth checking out. Blankets, throw pillows, duvets. It's all built to last. And the best part, everything is on sale right now. My wife and I upgraded to Boll & Branch a while ago. I was genuinely surprised how obvious the quality difference was from our old sheets. We were so impressed with the quality that we also recently purchased their waffle blanket, and it's become a favorite with the family. I'm not worried that you won't love it, but if for whatever reason you don't, you can rest easy knowing that there is a 30-night money-back guarantee. Give yourself and your loved ones the most extraordinary feeling sleep with 25% off site-wide. Plus, free shipping and extended returns during Boll & Branch's best sale of the year. Shop now at bollandbranch.com/Walsh with code Walsh. That's Boll & Branch, B-O-L-L-A-N-D, branch.com/Walsh, code Walsh for 25% off. Exclusions apply. Okay, let's talk about this. Colin Rugg reports, just in, man accused of throwing coins and shouting F for the Jews at Dave Portnoy outside a Mississippi pizza shop has been charged, according to TMZ. 20-year-old Patrick McClintock has been arrested and charged with disturbing the peace. Sergeant Brandon Lovelady says every person has the right to feel safe and respected in our community. Offensive words alone are protected, but when behavior disrupts a public event or risks violence, the Starkville Police Department will take steps to help maintain safety and security. So this guy's been arrested and charged with a crime, with disturbing the peace is the crime, for yelling F the Jews at Dave Portnoy when Portnoy was, I guess, in town doing one of his pizza review things. And this guy came up and yelled at him. Here's the video of the incident. Watch.
I like it. Hey, F the Jews! Dave Portnoy.
Not cool.
Why you come in the camera, buddy? Why you come here?
Oh my gosh. That was awful.
Hey, you!
Go away. Hey.
A couple things to say about this. First of all, obviously the kid is wrong, obviously, for behaving that way. It's gross, vulgar, crass, really stupid, and evil. And expressing hatred like that towards an entire group of people is evil. And this was, of course, unprovoked. Not that it would be okay if it was provoked, but Portnoy was just doing a pizza review, and I don't think there was any prior confrontation at all with this guy. He just walked up and yelled at him. So he's in the wrong, totally and completely, no doubt about that. Does that mean he should have been charged with a crime? Well, that's a different question, clearly. There are a lot of really bad things people can say that we would agree, or most of us would agree, should not be crimes. That's part of what free speech is all about. And we should be clear that he was charged for the words he said. I know some people are trying to pretend that he was charged because he threw coins. You can hear in the video, you can hear the coins hit the ground. But he wasn't charged for throwing coins. The coins, it wasn't like this was an assault charge because he threw coins at Dave Portnoy. The coins didn't even hit Dave, as far as I could tell. They fall right in front of him. And you could see Dave looking down at the coins as they hit the ground. So this was not an assault charge. This was, throwing a couple of coins on the ground is rude, definitely. It's not a criminal act. Okay, throwing coins on the ground, like in any other context, and you wouldn't be charged with a crime for that. This is not attempted murder by pennies or something. So the coins really had nothing to do with the charge. The charge is not assault. It's not battery. It's disturbing the peace. So he was charged for yelling the words, F the Jews. And the police sergeant said that he was disruptive and that Dave Portnoy has a right to feel safe and respected, quote unquote, in the community. So that is the logic behind the charge. So here's my take on this. And there are some people who are celebrating the fact that this guy was hit with charges. They say that it's great that he was hit with the charges. There are others who are saying, well, this is an infringement on free speech. And so taking kind of an absolutist free speech position that, hey, it's a horrible thing to say, but it's why we have free speech rights. You don't need the First Amendment to protect things that everybody agrees with and everyone thinks are good. You need it for the things that people find objectionable. So that's kind of the two sides on this. And I'm looking at it from a different angle. Because I think in a vacuum, you could make a reasonable argument for either position. But here's my problem. Keep this Dave Portnoy incident in mind as we move on to another incident that also happened this week. Actually, this was last night. So last night at Berkeley, leftist Antifa protesters, terrorists actually, they've been designated a terror group. So if that means anything, then that's part of the thing here. Does that mean anything? Does that have any implication at all? So far, it seems like it hasn't. So far, it seems like calling them a domestic terrorist organization has no implication to them whatsoever. So, but Antifa terrorist showed up at a TPUSA event. And by the way, this was an event featuring apparently Rob Schneider and Christian apologist Frank Turek, who was a close friend of Charlie's, and someone who's also done a lot of great work, by the way. So these are not right-wing extremists at this event. I mean, Rob Schneider, he's a nice guy. I've met him a few times. Very nice guy. Very much a moderate conservative. And I think that he would agree with that label. This is not a far-right person. This is Rob Schneider. And Antifa showed up anyway and had a hissy fit over a Rob Schneider event. And their protest / riot went on for many hours, late into the night. But I want to show you one. We'll look at a couple things, but I first just want to show you this. So this is one piece of footage from earlier in the day when the crowd is chanting, and they're chanting about Charlie Kirk, or they're referencing Charlie Kirk. And listen to what they say. So just to be clear, if you couldn't make it out, they were chanting, F your dead homie. Obviously referencing Charlie Kirk, who was killed. And now they're saying, F him, F your dead homie. Now, as I mentioned, as the night went on, they got more belligerent. They got more and more belligerent about Rob Schneider speaking at the college. And here they are later in the night trying to cross over the barricades that the cops set up. And we could, when you look at this footage, it's indistinguishable from any other Antifa riot over the last decade. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. They're not stopping. They're not calming down. They're not pulling back. They're not moderating. They're not becoming less violent. Not at all. Because why would they? They have not suffered any real consequences. So why would they? So here they are later in the night. Watch this.
Berkeley! Fascists out of 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 Berkeley!
So again, that's a scene that we've witnessed a million times. But let's go back to the other video. So they're chanting "F your dead homie." And you think about that Dave Portnoy video, "F the Jews." Here's my question. If we're going to arrest a kid who yelled "F the Jews," why haven't we done? Why isn't it that every single one of these Antifa thugs are under arrest right now for yelling "F your dead homie"? Why aren't all of them under arrest right now? How could it possibly be justified to arrest the former, the guy who said "F the Jews," and not the latter? The whole crowd of people yelling "F your dead homie" after Charlie Kirk was just assassinated. Especially if the pretense is disturbing the peace. Well, who disturbed the peace more between those two incidents? Can anyone possibly argue that the Portnoy guy disturbed the peace, but these thugs did not? Can anyone make that argument? And this is the problem. As far as I know, there were maybe a couple of arrests at Berkeley last night. Maybe. There certainly were not mass arrests. They weren't showing up with a bus and just throwing everybody in handcuffs and chains and throwing them into the bus and taking them to jail. They didn't do that. They never do that. And yet this other guy was arrested. So this is the issue. Now, look, I realize it's easy to deflect here and say, well, these are different jurisdictions. I understand that. Okay, I know how the law works. I understand these are different jurisdictions. But you're hiding from the point that I'm trying to make here. The point is that across the country, as we have seen on like a national scale, the law is not evenly applied. That's the point. These leftist scumbags are still, even now under this administration, they are still given a pass. They are still treated with kid gloves. They are still given carte blanche. And we're all sick of it. It's not just that we're sick of it. It can't continue this way. Everything breaks down when you've got a certain group and you look and say, well, they can do whatever they want, basically. The rules don't apply to them. We're going to apply the rules as strictly as we can to all these people over here, but not them. It doesn't work that way. You cannot have a society that way. Certainly not a civilized one. With the F the Jews guy, whatever his name was, what happened is that the authorities decided that they objected to his behavior so much that they would find something to charge him with. Is it even going to stick? Is a disturbing the peace charge going to stick? I don't know. You could argue it's like it's kind of thin gruel here. I mean, he shouted the thing, but it was over in 2 seconds. How much was the peace disturbed? I don't know. But doesn't matter. Like they just said, okay, we have these laws on the books, and we find that behavior so objectionable, we're just not going to tolerate it. And so if you do that, we're going to find something to charge you with. We're going to look in the books, and we're going to find it. in there. And these laws are on the books, and we're going to try to apply them. Maybe you beat it in court, but hey, good luck. And at the very least, you're going to have to do that. At the very least, you're going to get arrested. You're going to get your mugshot taken. Your mugshot's going to be out in the public, and you're going to end up in court, and you're going to have to fight it in court. So at the very least, this is going to be a major inconvenience for you. So at a minimum, that will be the penalty. So that's the attitude with somebody like this. And that's my question. Why isn't this attitude ever applied to these leftist thugs? And it doesn't do any good to say, well, this is Berkeley, it's different. No, it doesn't matter where it happens. It doesn't matter where it happens. It's the same story, okay? Everywhere, and we all know it. So why aren't we looking for anything and everything to charge these people with? Every time they gather together and start behaving this way, why aren't we saying, I'm going to look for anything I can possibly charge you with? Every single thing. Maybe it'll stick, maybe it won't. Maybe some of it will stick, but we're going to charge you with everything. I mean, disturbing the peace could be thrown at all of them. Every single protest, you could charge all of them with it every time. You could hit them with a lot more than that, but certainly at least that, and yet it never is. So this is the double standard. This is the two-tiered justice system. This is the problem. I mean, you could make an argument, a reasonable argument, for not charging any of the people that we talked about, not charging the Portnoy guy, and even not charging the leftists. You could make that argument. I mean, you could make a just like absolutist sort of free speech argument, and you could do that. You could also make a reasonable argument for charging all of them. But you cannot make a reasonable argument for charging only the Portnoy guy, but not these leftists. You can't make that argument, and yet this is what happens. This is the dynamic that nobody can defend. Nobody can rationalize it. Nobody can explain it. Well, we can explain it, but nobody can defend it, certainly. And yet this is it. Now, by the way, as attendees left the event last night in Berkeley, they were made to walk through a gauntlet of leftists screaming at them as they were leaving. And here's that, watch. All right. So, disturbing the peace, harassment. Yeah, there it is. These are a masked mob of people who have already expressed their desire to see people like you killed, and they are screaming at you. A lot of F-bombs being thrown. None of them were arrested. None of them will face any consequence at all, even though they are part of a group that was just declared a domestic terrorist organization. And as I said, this is just not sustainable. It just isn't. All right, here's something also grotesque. Stephanie Miller is a liberal radio host, apparently, and she recently met Representative Jasmine Crockett for some reason or another. And so here's how that went. This is the caption that she wrote on X. Why, yes, I did kiss the sneakers of Jasmine Crockett, and I do worship the ground she walks on. And she was lovely about it. And sure enough, you can see the photos there. There are the photos. She's on her hands and knees, kissing the feet of Jasmine Crockett, literally prostrate on the ground before her, worshiping her, licking her shoes. And then you got a bunch of other women sort of standing around, smiling approvingly. There's one woman, I don't know, that woman on the bottom left. Look at that, the bottom left. This woman is has gone insane with joy. She is so pleased by this spectacle of another white woman bowing before a black woman that, look at her. She's in a state of like a psychotic ecstasy over it. She cannot contain herself, and just pure joy at this humiliation ritual that's unfolding. I can't think of a better encapsulation of modern leftism than this. I mean, this is it. This is the most perfect photo ever taken when it comes to illustrating the leftist mind virus. You'll never see a better one. I mean, this is the four of them together, those four photos. A middle-aged liberal white woman on her hands and knees kissing the feet of a semi-literate black DEI congresswoman who isn't even qualified to be a waitress at Waffle House, much less sit in Congress, and yet here she is. And amazingly, of course, these are also the people who claim that Trump voters are in a cult. These are also the people who go around chanting "No Kings." In fact, I looked this up, and unsurprisingly, Stephanie Miller herself, when I checked this, she has attended multiple No Kings rallies. She has given speeches at No Kings rallies. So she's been at the front of the line marching, saying "No Kings." And yet, here she is kissing the feet of a politician while claiming that she doesn't want a king. Well, if you don't want a king, Stephanie, maybe the first step is to get off of your knees, you slave. Maybe, if you don't want kings, maybe remove your lips from that politician's shoes. If you don't want kings, that's the first step. First step is take your mouth off of their feet. That's the first thing I would recommend. You peasant. You serf. Bowing before this woman. And look, we as Americans, we do not bow before any man or woman. It is disgraceful to do that. It's the most un-American thing you could possibly do. Americans bow before God and God alone. But to make matters worse, you are bowing before the most mediocre human who has ever lived on the planet. The only thing impressive about Jasmine Crockett is how unimpressive she is. The most unimpressive nothing of a person who has ever lived. A person who is so thoroughly middling and uninspiring that in an actual meritocracy, she would not advance, certainly not beyond the position of like shift manager at Dairy Queen. And she wouldn't even be good at that. So I don't mean this as any slight of the shift managers at Dairy Queen, but she's the kind of she's the one who she shows up when you ask to speak to a manager because they got your order wrong, but they won't fix it because they don't care. And then she appears and she has an even worse attitude than the employee you were just dealing with. So that's Jasmine Crockett. That was her real calling in life. To be a Dairy Queen shift manager with a terrible attitude. And yet here she is. That should have been the highest rung, and yet she reached all the way to Congress because the left, as we see here, worships mediocrity. I mean, literally worships it. As long as it's black mediocrity. They worship black mediocrity, and then, it's important to add that stipulation in. Okay, let's play this. This is from 60 Minutes, and they're trying to explain why it's terrible that federal funding was cut off from institutions like Harvard. And they interviewed a Harvard researcher who says that, she's on the brink of a major discovery. In fact, she's on the brink of potentially curing or preventing breast cancer, could save millions of lives. And yet federal funding was taken away by the evil Nazi fascists. Millions will die because of it. This is what she claims. Let's watch.
You were talking to the American public. What would your research do for them?
My research has the potential to prevent their daughters and their wives and their cousins from developing breast cancer. And I don't think any taxpayer would want to interfere with progress on a project like that.
Joan Brugge is director of the Ludwig Cancer Center at Harvard Medical School. For 50 years, she has applied for and won competitive federal grants that helped uncover how tumors form and resist treatment, and discovered innovative therapies.
Did I send you that note about
When her $1 million annual funding was canceled last spring, she was leading a team that had identified the earliest precursors of breast cancer.
The ultimate goal is to find a treatment that will eliminate those cells that carry the mutations.
And in effect, prevent the cancer.
Yes, prevent the cancer.
Last spring, you got an email. What did it say?
It listed 2 grants from the National Institute of Health and said that they were terminated.
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 What went through your mind?
It was just like a gut punch. My knees buckled, and I had to sit down because I just never imagined that research focused on a disease like cancer would be canceled for a reason that was unrelated to the quality of the research or the progress of the research. But this was across the board for issues relating to diversity and anti-Semitism at Harvard.
Okay, so this is the claim. She says that this funding was cut off, and so she can't do the research. Now, I should mention that there are claims online, competing claims, credible claims, I think, that this woman's research was not going to have any significant impact on breast cancer at all. So there's a guy named Jason Locasale responded, and he said this: "I'm actually the lead and corresponding author on the most cited research paper of this person's career. Someone told me that today, and I verified it. The claim that her work has any substantial effect on breast cancer is a dramatic overstatement. Like much of what's being presented in this 60-minute segment, it's a PR narrative designed to grab money. It's dishonesty from these institutions about what technology from the life sciences can actually do. And it says more about the way universities grift the public for sympathy and funding than anything about science itself." So, well said. And probably all that needs to be said in response to this. This is a money grab by this woman and by the institution she works for. 60 Minutes is presenting it as uncritically, they're presenting this propaganda as if it's a fact. No pushback on it at all. No skepticism. I mean, you got this researcher sitting there saying, I was going to cure breast cancer tomorrow, and now I can't. And this idiot reporter sitting there like, oh, real? Wow. Oh my gosh. You mean if we took this funding away, you were just hours away from curing breast cancer and they took your funding away and now you can't? Well, that must obviously be true. That can't be anything but true. I will ask no follow-up questions at all. That was his response. But let's pretend for a moment that she actually is working on a cure for breast cancer. Let's pretend that she is on the brink of saving millions of lives. Well, think about that. That actually makes it worse. That makes it worse for her and for Harvard. Because that would mean that she would be telling us, in that case, that she could cure breast cancer, but now she's not going to do it because we aren't giving her millions of dollars out of our own pockets, out of the pockets of taxpayers. So what she's saying is, sorry, guys. I mean, if you gave me another $1 million, maybe I could save your lives from breast cancer, but you won't give it to me, so I guess you have to die. Sorry, folks. Meanwhile, Harvard itself has an endowment that is, at this point, more than $50 billion. Harvard is sitting on more than $50 billion. The grant for this woman's research was, we were told, $1 million a year. That's about, I'm not good at math, that's about 0.002% of Harvard's endowment. It's the equivalent of if you had $1 million in the bank and someone came up to you and said, hey, I could cure cancer, I just need some money. Oh, how much do you need? $20. And you said, nah, sorry, can't afford it. Go get a grant. I don't know, get it from the taxpayer. Get everyone to chip in. I can't afford it. Sorry, can't give you $20 to cure cancer. Hey, it's not my fault. It's all their fault. It's the taxpayer's fault. What do you want me to do? I give you $20. Next thing I know, I'm broke. That's the equivalent of that. And so Harvard won't spend, they have the money to cure cancer and they won't spend it. They're hoarding the money rather than spend a tiny infinitesimal fraction of it on life-saving research. Now, there are only two explanations for this. One is that her research is not life-saving. It's all a scam. And Harvard knows it. Or two, her research is going to save lives, but Harvard would rather millions of people die instead of dipping into their own coffers and spending a little bit of money, like a few bucks, in basically on curing cancer. So they're holding millions of cancer victims hostage, essentially, in order to extract money from the taxpayers. Like, that's the other possibility. Either she is a grifter and a scam artist, or they are willingly allowing millions to die because they don't want to spend their own money. I mean, in either case, Harvard is the villain here. I mean, no matter how you slice it, Harvard is the villain. But I think we all know that the first scenario is the reality here. This woman is not going to cure cancer. She's been at it for 50 years, hasn't done it yet. How many millions have been wasted by this woman? How many millions have been spent? What does she have to show for it? Nothing. And this is most federally funded research is like this. It's all a scam. It's all just a big grift. I mean, there's so much grifting going on here. And you got a whole class of scientists and researchers who have been bilking the taxpaying public for decades, extracting billions of dollars collectively, and have not done anything. And it's not like the average American, we have no control over this money being sent. We have no way of like checking in on it. We're also not scientists, so we can't. It's like, we don't know. So if some woman in a lab coat sits down and says, because of this, that, and this thing over here, look at this little petri dish. You see, because of that, it shows I'm about to cure cancer. Well, most of us, if you're like me, it's like, that doesn't sound right, but I can't say for sure it's not true. And because of that, they're able to exploit that to just continue extracting billions and billions of dollars from us, rather than these universities spending their own money. Which, why do you have $50 billion if you're not going to spend it on that? If the research is worthwhile and it could really cure cancer, why do you have the $50 billion if not for that? We have less than 2,000 Daily Wire lifetime memberships remaining. Turns out having all access benefits for life with no renewals is something everybody wants. So here are your options. You could buy one while they're still available, or you could win mine. That's right. I have my very own lifetime membership to give away, and I made it ridiculously easy to enter. Download the free Daily Wire Plus app in the App Store, open it, and tap follow under my picture. That's it. You're entered, and who knows? I could be calling you to give you my personal lifetime membership. But before any of that happens, you need to download the Daily Wire Plus app and follow me now to enter to win. Finally, this is something I saw on social media, not really a headline, but Zohran Mamdani's wife, this is just funny anyway, so we'll mention it. Zohran Mamdani's wife is somebody named Rama Duwaji, and the media says that she's an artist. So they've tried to make a big deal out of this woman being an artist, claiming that she's an acclaimed artist in New York. An immigrant artist in New York, their favorite kind of immigrant female artist from New York. Maybe not from New York, but she lives there. And so the media can't get enough of it. Well, somebody went and grabbed some of the samples of her artwork, which she posts on Instagram. This is Rama Duwaji. And here they tweeted out, you can see the art here. And I don't know, you look at this and you really just see the state of art right now. You see what passes for art when you look at that. There are two things that really jump out at you. First of all, this stuff is really bad. I mean, it's hideous. I could draw better than this. And I'm not exaggerating. And I'm not a good artist. I was a good artist in 6th grade. I actually passed for it, if you could believe it. If you could believe it, in 6th grade, I had potential as an artist. I really did. I was pretty good in my sketch pad, I would draw pictures and they were decent for a sixth grader. I never developed past that. I just kind of, everyone thought I had potential. Turned out, no potential. This is as far as you're going as an artist. And it kind of cut off right there. And, but I progressed up to about the level of sixth grade as an artist. And I still would am better than this. I don't even know what that, like, I could easily do that. And if a high schooler drew that, you would take their sketch pad away from them, and you would say, okay, you got to stop doodling now. This is not for you. You don't have any, this is not your, you need to go pick up a math book, kid. This is not, you have no potential in this world. So it's just bad from a technical and aesthetic perspective. And, but this, of course, is the dominant feature of most modern art, is that it's ugly. And ugliness is kind of the point, which is why it's not art at all. Art that is ugly on purpose, or even by accident, is not art. You know, art is not, despite what you are told, what we're all told, art is not entirely subjective. It is a subjective expression by the artist, because they are communicating something to us. So it's subjective in that case, in that sense, but there is an objective quality to it, because art by definition is supposed to be beautiful. Emerson said that art is the creation of beauty, which I think, if you had to come up with a definition of art, I think that's a pretty good one. That's the best definition anyone's ever offered, I think. Art is the creation of beauty. Art conveys beauty. It creates and conveys beauty. And an artist is someone who can create beauty. To experience art is to experience beauty. Now, that doesn't mean that art can't be sad or tragic or difficult or anything like that. Art doesn't always have to be sunshine and happiness, okay? But it does have to be beautiful, or it's not art. And that's what an artist is. An artist is someone who can find and see and create beauty in a way that other people can't. And if they can create beauty out of something that is sad or tragic or difficult, then that's all the more reason why they are an artist. That's the talent of being an artist. So this is anti-art because it's ugly. But the other thing you notice is that it's intensely, like, exclusively self-referential. Every portrait is of her own face. It's so on the nose that when I saw this, I had to go check her Instagram myself, because it's so on the nose. And no, this is it. She even depicts herself in the George Floyd pose, doing the Floyd, as the kids would say, with the knee on the neck. And she even puts herself in everything. She cannot see outside of herself. The only thing she sees in the world is herself. And this is the other feature of modern art, is that it is ugly and also narcissistic. It is ugly and self-focused. And why is that? Well, because these are narcissists. These are people who hate themselves and yet are obsessed with themselves. And anybody who's obsessed with themselves will also hate themselves. They are obsessed with how much they hate themselves, obsessed with the negative feelings that they have about themselves. And that becomes the subject of every piece of art or anti-art, quasi-art that they create. And it's not that there isn't anything interesting or legitimate that you can do with art to it's not that you can't create art about yourself, or art that it has self-introspection. That the self is certainly a valid subject for art, but if all you can see is yourself, and for the leftist, that's all they can see. That's all that exists. That really is all that exists, is the self. And if that's the case, then there's nothing interesting you can say about the self, because the self is a worthy subject of art if you're looking at yourself in the context of this amazing world, this vast cosmos, this, the self in relation to the world, the self in relation to God, the self in relation to others, in relation to those you love, and so on and so on. And there's a lot to be said artistically there. The possibilities are infinite. But these modern artists, these fake artists, they are only thinking about the self for its own sake, the self as the only thing that exists in the world. And when you do that, you end up with something that is just empty and ugly and superficial and not art. But I suppose I'm being naive because, when these political figures, the Hunter Bidens of the world, what's the Kamala Harris's stepdaughter, L. Emhoff or whatever, also pretends to be an artist. Usually there's another reason why these kinds of people get into art, and it's not because they want to express something about themselves or the world. It's so that you can do a little doodle and sell it at an auction. And look at that, someone paid you $500,000 for that little doodle. That's strange. Let's not look into that. No, giant money laundering scheme, basically. I don't know that to be the case, but that's very often why these people get into art in the first place. So I don't know if that's the case here. In any case, that will do it for the show. We went kind of long with all that, so won't be a daily cancellation today. But we'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day. Talk tomorrow. Godspeed.
Today on The Ben Shapiro Show, the BBC leadership is in turmoil after slandering Donald Trump. And we examine their long history of pathetic bias. The government shutdown is ending, and Democrats are furious. And Marjorie Taylor Greene continues her anti-Trump crusade. All on today's Ben Shapiro Show. Give it a listen.